Fair
Yes.
enough. So the original founders of the organization from Cologne, Germany, and our mission is to make context a first-class citizen within your data architecture. So as we talk about Arango's architecture, we start with a multi-model database as the foundation. And then from there, we've layered in over 20 AI services, including RAG with obviously retrievers. We've got natural language processing. We've made huge forays into the platform itself. And we're blessed with having some amazing customers, including NVIDIA internally as a customer for their what they call ND bugs. So as they diagnose their chips with their product engineering team, they're actually using Arango to have that as an agent. US Air Force, which I won't get into, Zscaler. And for those that have the opportunity, if you go to our website, arango.ai, under the resources tab, that's where we have our events. And on May 27th, next week, on next Wednesday, our CEO, Shaker, will be talking with Zscaler around leveraging Arango for incident management and how they're handling over 40,000 cases a day. So great case. And then for those that are in gaming, Cloud Imperia Games, fantastic customer, pushing the scale with over 1 billion entities within their environment. Why Arango? Why people come to us generally is their agents aren't giving accurate answers. If I look at it very simply, in today's world, if you just start with pure vector databases, typically getting semantic search is going to give you great answers for a chatbot. But as agents have moved into the agentic world, and not to steal anything from Ravi's presentation, they need to be able to reason, decide, and act. Now, on an autonomous basis, they need to be trusted. And to get trust, they need to have context in the business context. And that means traceable, being governed. So that's what we deliver at Arango. We basically bridge your domain expertise with large language models to make agents more trusted, reliable, and governed. So with that quick introduction, I'm going to be the slide person for Ravi here. And Ravi, at this point, maybe I can get you to introduce yourself
Sure.
to the team.
Okay, everybody can hear me okay? Thumbs up. Yep.
Yes,
Okay,
perfect.
all right. Thank you very much. So again, I always want to talk about, because it's a meetup, so it's not just a technical talk. So I wanted to make sure I introduce myself. My name is Ravi. Basically, if you to look at it, it does have AI in it. I'm just kidding. I actually was born in India. I was actually in a automobile company, so I know a little bit about automobiles. I was on the shop floor, and then the whole ERP revolution happened, and that's how I got interested in technology. And I could see how business processes or functions or manufacturing can be transformed using ERPs. That was my first introduction, and then, of course, then the journey continued, and I joined a startup. Then that was acquired by Informatica. Then I joined SAP and GE, and then JP Morgan Chase recently. And then at JP Morgan Chase, we had started to experiment with the AI, but again, as a regulated industry, we have a lot of restrictions inside the company. I'm sure some of you who are in very large enterprises have a lot of, kind of things to think about when you're implementing or experimenting with AI. But I wanted to be free of that because I wanted to learn. So if you look at it, my hero, Einstein, even though there is a debate about elasticity and plasticity of brain, I think it is elastic. You can continue to grow till you die. So for me, this was an opportunity. So I ended up joining Arango last year in April, and since then it's been a fantastic journey. And as you said, Chris, and even Sridhar, that you guys have been kind of using us, but we have transformed ourselves, and we are now actually head first everything in it. So we are basically are an AI company. And of course, when you're saying you are a different company than what you were, you're not a database company, you're an AI company. What is the problem you're trying to solve? And that's the next slide. So if you go into the next slide, the topic we want to talk about is context. And I think there are various definitions of context. So I want to make sure that we go through some of that stuff. Other thing I want to talk about is that this is not necessarily a vendor pitch. So me and Mark talked about this, and we said, okay, it's a meetup. It's the first time we are now reinvigorating our community. So we didn't want to go into too much of a hard sales and product and so on and so forth, even though some of you are familiar with us or wanted to understand. I wanted to establish first the need, because anytime you build a product or you build a solution or a company, you first want to make sure, do you understand the problem? Do you understand the need? And then is that the problem worth solving for? And then is your definition of that problem or that solution is resonating with the audience? So today's focus is mostly going to be defining the problem. So idea is that we're going to talk about context. And then if you look at context, and there are different ways people talk about context, but these are Groucho Marx. And it's not just being clever. So time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana, right? Now, it is almost like a classic example in computational linguistics with structural and lexicon ambiguity. Flies is positive verb in the first one, right? So it's a verb, time flies like an arrow. In the other one is basically, and that's, it's a noun in the seconds. So fruit flies like a banana. So completely different meaning. Time flies like an arrow. So they're talking about time, which is flying. So then I'm sure when you're in very interesting conversations, maybe like this we're having now, the time will fly by or not. But on the other hand, fruit flies is actually an insect, and they're like bananas. So they're not the same thing, even though the word is exactly the same. And the AI models are very good at understanding the words and predicting the next word. But then how do we make sure they have the right context? So this is what the discussion is about. And the whole idea is context is the mechanism that collapses ambiguity into a specific correlated interpretation. So what does it mean, really? So some of the things that as a software developer or somebody who's working on a project and so on and so forth, we have to think about is it has to be able to, a context would mean different things for different people, but this is the definition, at least I kind of turn to. So number one thing is context should provide some signal, right? It's like a probability distribution over an interpretation, right? More signals, sharper focus. So if you can actually get better signal, more signal, it makes your problem framing, solutioning much more kind of desirable. Then the second part is, can this be understood? Is it understandable? So context is about meaning. It's not about volume. So I know there's a definition of context in AI, which is to say, what is the context window? What is the size, number of tokens that can be interpreted at a certain time? And now we are talking about million tokens and so on and so forth, context windows. But more tokens is not always better context, and we'll get to that. Then the other one is, it should answer who, what, when, where, why. So all the word W's, because this basically maps directly to the information about the information. So it's not the only what is being asked, but also who's asking, why they're asking, when are they asking, when is it relevant, what are they asking, can we understand it? And then the other thing is, are there relevant signals which are more relevant than the question being asked? Is the intent behind the question is understood? So this is also something that we have to figure out, like, okay, if you type a question, can the AI understand not just the question, but the intent behind the question, and also understand why you asked the question more than the question itself? So this is basically, if you were thinking about in AI terms, this will be an argument against the native or naive chunking and full context, like put all of the data in the context window and let the AI figure this out, right? And then, of course, nothing will be true or nothing will be closer to truth if we didn't put any constraints. So if you don't provide any constraints, if you don't provide any guardrails, if you don't provide any interaction history, there is no correlation between what you ask and what the answer you can expect. So if you go to the next slide. So this is what we said, okay, provides the signal needed for interpretation, right? So signal prior probability distribution would be an example over interpretation. More signals, sharp. I think we did this already. So is this duplicative? What context means? Can you move the slide, Mark?
Sorry, this one?
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out. Context turns data into decision. That's right. Yep. So again, models are really good at plausible text, right? What our job as a context engineers or as somebody who's building agents or who's building AI is to align that plausibility with the decision context. So same data you could have, but a different context would actually have a different outcome. So I want you to remember data to context to meaning to decision to action. That's the framework, right? So unless the context is applied, data does not have meaning. That's what our belief is. So for example, customer has 3 open tickets, but a customer who's a $2 million ARR or a customer who purchases millions of dollars of goods from you versus a visitor who's just visiting your website and has an issue have a very different context and the way you would treat those 2 tickets or those different discussions. So that is something what we mean by context, that understanding the data, but then also understanding the context around it. So typically if you're a developer, the model is doing the maximum likelihood estimation because it's been trained. So whatever it's been trained on, they are just going to use that to infer your question, try to get an answer. But your context is the data that you apply. And that is the additional information that you need to provide to the model so that they can make decision that is relevant to you and your organization. So if you go next. So the signals that we use. So I want to make sure we do some correlation because we are almost getting into general intelligence from artificial intelligence. And we are almost treating AI as humans right now. So you have agents who kind of almost like human equivalents, or at least we are training them like that. We have supervisor agents. We have agents who are evaluation agents. There are agents who are governance agents and so on and so forth. So we're almost building these agents almost as in the image of our human world, where we have people, we have supervisors, we have managers, we have governance, compliance people who actually manage those processes. So on the other hand, humans naturally, through evolution, are amazingly, extraordinarily context engines. So when we are talking and when you're talking, when I'm talking to you, I'm not only looking at the words that are coming out of your mouth or what that's getting into my ears. I'm also watching your body language. I'm looking at your tone. If I know you, I have a history and I have a context. And sometimes, as they say, you can infer from not what's being said, but also what's not being said. And that humans are very good at that. Some are better at it. So that's called EQ or emotional intelligence or emotional quotient. But for AI, I think these signals are kind of implicit, right? So for AI, this needs to be that they need to be explicitly stated. So for humans, these are signals that are implicit. When we look at and we are hearing a conversation, we try to infer and frame all of this into our conversation and take it into account. But for AI, if you give them words, they will use the words. If you give them additional information in terms of prompts, they will use that information. So for AI system, these signals have to be explicitly stated and then need to be injected. So nothing is assumed. You don't want them to assume anything. So there is a fundamental asymmetry. So humans run on an implicit context, whereas we as builders of AI systems have to say what is implicit in our domain or in your enterprise and make it much more explicit in the data layer on the context layer. So if you go next. So what is the human intent signals? How do we look at it, right? So we look at culture, we look at roles, we look at tone, we look at shared history, we look at nonverbal cues, clarifying questions. So we infer intent from all these signals. We don't notice it. It's like breathing. We don't need to notice breathing. We breathe. And it's just like magic. Our brain works in a mysterious way. We're still trying to figure this out. But all these things define the intent. If we translate into your world, into your enterprise world for AI, you could define, and again, this is my definition, not could be yours, could be different. But if I have to map it to AI or to your enterprise, I will say culture would be like a domain knowledge. What does your company do? What your company values are? What is your terminology? What are the business rules? Roles is clear. What is your role? But you can transfer that into, is it an RBAC? Is it an ABAC? What is the governance, user profile, and so on and so forth. Then the other thing is the tone. But the tone for AI They don't necessarily understand that part, but it's the format and the styling constraints that you apply in your enterprise. There are certain things that you use. There are certain formats that you want to use. There is a certain way your users consume the information, or your agents or systems consume the information. And there are different personas, different prompts that you want to provide. And then the other one is shared history, very different. For humans, a little bit different. But in the shared history, when we talk about in terms of AI, it's more about conversation state, memory. Does this episodic memory in the agent memory system, are you actually tracking what you asked earlier? Is the agent or your AI models are tracking what you said and asked earlier, and can they apply that in the next conversation that you have? And then the other part is, of course, I think you went too quickly, but okay.
Sorry.
Yep. And then the other one, no nonverbal cues. I will put this into click patterns, dwell time. If you are actually looking at it and people are stuck on certain things, that's what we need to be able to infer. And then, of course, clarifying questions in your AI, what could be when was it a single shot or a multi-shot query, that you can tell you that sometimes the answer or the context that you're providing is not enough, and you have to provide additional context. If you go next. So this is what AI context is, or at least what the AI sees, right? They are already pre-trained. So if you use a model that has been pre-trained on a data which was 6 months ago versus now, you will get a little bit different answers. So everything that the model learned during pre-training and fine-tuning is encoded in the weights. But then when you do the prompts, in the system prompts, conversation history, user messages, output, all of those things are baked in. So this is what most people today, when I talk about context engineering, think of it as the context. And then, of course, there's an external context, which is the tools, the tools that you use, whether you use CloudWork or whether you use any other tools, whether you use RAG results, whether you have agents that are your tools, or tools using agents, or any APIs that you interface with. And for us, all of that is the context that you provide to the AI or the inference. And then if that is missing, or some of these things are missing, then you lose the context. And if the context is wrong, it is actually wrong, but it's very confidently wrong. So what the takeaway is, the models don't fail gracefully, they fail plausibly. Okay, if you go next. So this is one of the, I don't know if you're familiar with, but Necker cube. Context also means, visual ambiguity also means, like, what is the perspective that you're looking at? So ambiguity is meaning without grounding. Context is viewpoint plus conventions. Basically, you have to first define which way is up before you can argue which is 6 and which is 9. So again, this is where it's not just about words. It's about any situation where the model's prior doesn't have enough signal to commit to one interpretation. Because you don't want to pick model to have multiple choices and pick one, and then you are at the mercy of the model. You actually want to be very, very specific so that model picks the exact match or the exact perspective that you want it to be. If you go next. And why it is a problem right now? So right now, with the agentic world, we're not talking about chatbots. There's much more onus on making sure that your context is and your agents are behaving properly. They're getting the right answers, they're answering the right questions, and they're answering it very specifically, and they're accurate. Because it's not just about that you are going to miss an answer or you would not know something. It can actually have financial impact. It can have a catastrophic impact. It can have an impact where you can be, denying a claim to eligible buyer, which can get you into trouble with the government. So these are some of the things that we need to make sure that if I say I need to book a trip to Portland next month, we need to be able to provide, or the model has to infer, or we need to be able to provide the context to say which Portland. Is it in Maine or Oregon? What is the budget? What are the dates? And are you just asking, or you want to make a booking? And if it's an agentic workflow, then it becomes really, really expensive. And if you look at just this, there are about 360 possibilities that you can have based upon these few questions. And if you look at those possibilities, if the model has to infer it, regardless of how expensive or how large is your context window, this is going to be a very expensive proposition. So if the information can be inferred from existing context with 80% confidence, then you have to resolve it silently. But if it is below that threshold, then we have to make sure that being wrong is very, very high risk, and make sure that that decision is built into your logic or built into your context window. Okay, let's go next. So again, I don't think I need to go too much into it. I think all of you are familiar with these. There's a hallucination, disambiguation, overgeneral answers, which are not original. They don't really answer a specific, executable action. There's a wrong tone. There's a totally wrong answers. And they are not the bugs. We say the models don't fail, is the context or the agents when they don't have the right context. And that's what fails. So they are predicted failures or predicted failure modes of an underpowered context layers. I'm sure that some of you or all of you have experienced some of these things, but it's not the models. It's typically the context that we provide to the models. I think models are getting really, really good at it. And they are almost at a stage where if you can provide them the right context, you have pretty much 90% certainty that you will get a good answer. If you go next. So the question is, okay, we talked quite a bit about what is context, why we need it, what is the issues. But then what is that we need? Like, what should we do? So this is the way we define in Arango what we think is context and what you need or AI need. So one is definitely the terminology, the linguistic, the semantics, making sure, because the words have meaning, we can make sure that they can actually be understood, the vocabulary, the terminology, the domain glossaries, all of those things are very well defined and understood. The second one is the task. What is the objective? So this is the structured goal representation. So this is your task schema. What the agent is trying to accomplish, what format the output needs to be, that has to be very, very clearly defined. Number 3, we feel user preferences do play a role in the context window. So it's not just about the question, it's about your profile, the information about who's asking the question, because based upon who's asking that question and what the profile that question is asking, your context would be different. Because in some cases, it could just be purely security. You can only see salary of your subordinates, but you can't see salary of your managers. So in this case, if you don't understand who the user is, and we ask, show me the salary of everybody, you don't want agent to be able to see the salary of everybody, or a user to be able to see that. The other one, which we really are passionate about, is situational or temporal. What was true yesterday may not be true today, and what is true today may not be true tomorrow, because facts change, things happen. So yesterday we didn't have this meetup. So if somebody asked me, hey, did you do your meetup? My answer would be no. Today, if they ask me later in the afternoon, my answer would be yes. And it's not the wrong answer, or it's not a different answer. It's just an answer which is depending upon the time. So I'm not sure how you guys are thinking about it, but we do feel that user preference, temporal, the understanding of the objective, understanding of the semantics, and then most importantly, the domain, the workflow, the exceptions, the governance, those are absolutely critical. And then all of that has to be backed by your ground truth, which is basically your own internal documents, databases, and APIs. So models can generate answers, but if you want them to generate answers based upon your enterprise, your need, and how you do things, all of those things have to be fed into those to provide a better agentic experience or an outcome. If you go next. So this is what we say. What is the context stack? You have system rules, so we need to make sure the system rules are applied in the context. So when we define the context and we apply the context, we define what are the system rules, how to apply them. We define the session goals. So this is basically what the agent or chatbot or any model has to accomplish. What are the preferences? This is what I refer to as user profile. Like, what is that user is trying to do? What is the conversation? Sorry.
Yes.
Mukta, yes, you had a question? Oh, okay. And then you have staying conversation state. So you want to make sure there is history. Then you have the retrieve facts that you can actually learn from it. And then you have the tool results. So again, a context is not just single layer, it's a multi-stack layer. And then you need to be able to overlay on each one of them to make sure that you are able to provide those answers to your agents or your AI so that you get the right answers. And if you go next.
Oh, sorry. That was a build.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So now, one of the other technique you would hear about, and there are different types of RAGs. I read every day, and there's like 20,000 or 20 types of RAGs that are coming in every day. But basically, RAG is the last part, which I said, that how do you ground your model? But that's just one part of it. So, but you do need to do that. So the idea is how you actually inject your organizational knowledge, your documents, your information, your data to the model, which they have not been trained on. So you want to make sure that the user query, the retrievals, your knowledge base, and the answers are with citations, so they can actually specifically prove why the answer is what it is and where the answer is coming from. So again, if you can prove that, or if you can show it with citations, you can actually provide the lineage, you can provide actual content from which you picked up the answer. That creates a lot of trust. And trust is a problem today with AI. Most people think AI doesn't work. 75% of the projects are not taking off ground. The ROI is lacking. But that's, again, I just say again, same thing. It is how you apply this tool, how you apply the RAG, how you apply the context. That matters more than just the model itself. If we go next. So again, if a fact can change, don't remember it, fetch it, right? So in enterprise, things will change. So you don't want to have a static layer of context. It's never going to be static. So you get used to it, that your context layer has to be building with every interaction, every agentic interaction actually also have to be fed back into the context. So it's not just about your enterprise data. Now you have to worry about if now you have agents that are deployed or chatbots that are deployed, all of that interaction also have to be built and put into your RAG systems as part of the context that has to be fed back into the context that needs to be now for the next iteration of your agent or chatbot. So it is the architectural choice between, on the left, you build the context window, you say, well, my job is done and I can move on. On the right-hand side is no, it's real time, it's fact check and accurate, and it's not one time, it's actually constantly updating. And then it's sourced from the live system, and it's real time, or it's up to minute relevance. So again, this is where people are kind of seeing when they go from pilot to production. In pilots, because the curated data set, questions are prefixed because you're testing, your data is prefixed, your behavior is predictable. But as soon as you open it up to production, to end users or external users are not predictable. They will ask questions that you didn't anticipate. The data set that they will provide or the data set that you think they want to use is not relevant anymore. So you have to make sure when you go from pilot to production that you're building a system that's constantly evolving, constantly is real time, is constantly being updated, and is constantly relevant. So the risk, if it is stale, you get wrong information. If it is leaky, you can expose sensitive data. If it's untrusted, this is malicious or biased or unreliable. And you absolutely don't want any contextual biases introduced, which could be the model biases that can actually, skew the answers that you're trying to get. So just like anything, if context is the most important thing, you do need to have a governance layer around that context. If you go next. So then question should be, what does Arango propose? This is a vendor pitch right now, so this is what we do. This is how we want to focus on. So what I want to make sure everybody understands, we're not a compute layer, so we actually sit on any of the hyperscalers, or if you have your own enterprise data centers, or if you want to build your own stack, you want to have it on an appliance. We can sit on any of them. So we are in Kubernetes, we are cloud native. We are not your enterprise data. You own your enterprise data. That could be one system, multiple systems, 10 systems, hundreds of systems, thousands of systems. We're not an LLM. We are not trying to be building models. We work with any models that you bring, any model that you open source, whether it's open source, frontier models, closed source models, or your own model that you're building. And we are not a business application layer. We're not the one who is building agents, MCPs. We do have our own MCPs, we do have our own agents, but they are for our contextual data foundation. So what we are now transforming from a Arango graph database or multi-model database to a contextual data foundation. That's what we call ourselves. And the mission that we are on to is to deliver the context like what I defined earlier, but basically what things mean, how they relate, when, so temporal aspect, where they come from, and everything is then wrapped around well, who's asking the question and who the user is and what the profile of the user is. So if you go next, how does that translate into actual deliverables? So we are still very much built upon our Arango, we used to be called ArangoDB. We call it now Contextual Data Foundation. So it's still the same database, but we now have vector, graph, document, key value, search, all of them combined in one place. So if you were just using us earlier as a graph database, rest assured we can do all of these other things. So you don't have to stitch together a Frankenstein to take Postgres, Pinecone, some graph database, whether us or somebody else's, and then have a search, Elasticsearch or any other search, and send on Redis and try to put this together and then try to build your contextual data foundation. You get it out of the box. We have that already. On top of that, we build this whole Kubernetes contextual operations layer because one of the things we realize is that it's not just the database and how you manage the data, but also you want to make sure how you manage governance, security, RBAC, ABAC, SSO, integration with other systems, DevOps, CI/CD pipelines, and so on and so forth, because you're going to be deploying these things. You want it to be integrated with your own CI/CD pipelines. So that's what we call contextual operations. And then the latest and greatest, which most of the people you may not be familiar with, but I have a good news to share after this, is the contextual foundation or contextual data for AI, which is where we actually provide you out of the box different type of RAGs, unstructured, structured, being able to build that graph here automatically, interact with our system through natural language. You don't have to worry about whether you should build a vector RAG, you should build a hybrid RAG, you should build a graph RAG, or context RAG, and all this other stuff. We basically provide you the tools, we provide you optimization tools, we provide you orchestration tools, we provide you importing capabilities where you can actually have your structured or unstructured data and you are able to actually, maybe in like hours, you're able to take your data, create a knowledge graph, have a graph RAG, have a natural language question. You can see the ontology, you can ask the question, and you're up and running with your agentic workforce day one. So that's what we provide out of the box. And one of the good news that I wanted to share in July timeframe, we will be actually coming out with our own. So some of your community members. Hey, Jeff. Sorry, you had a question?
No, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying that some of you have access to our ArangoDB community edition. Good news is we are actually coming out to a new community edition, which all of these things will be part of the community edition. So you basically, if you're a developer or you're an enterprise, you're able to download it, play around with it. We also have managed services. So if you don't have the infrastructure, you want us to provide the infrastructure, we can host you as well. Of course, for hosting, you'll have to pay, but you don't have to pay for license costs if you're just playing around with it and you're not using it for production, but you're using it for evaluation or building your own projects. So like Johnny started out to say, I want to build some agents or I'm using agents. I'm interested in this topic and they want to do this. So those are the kind of things that we are going to do. So you will see this is why we started this conversation on the meetup, because I also wanted to pre-announce that we will be actually launching our community. And the community will be now very much different from what our earlier community was, which was very database specific, graph specific. Now this new community from Arango is going to be about the context layer. And that community is actually much more geared towards not only just the graph database, of course, it is part of it, but also graph, vector, AI, context layer, all of that stuff. And it'll be available to you starting July so that you can play around with it. Okay.
Right on.
I don't know, Mark, if I did a okay job on the timing or the content, but we didn't want to make it very, very salesy or technical at this point. We just wanted to just engage with all of you and get your feedback.
Perfect. So I'll pause here and just take a look and see what we've got in chat. Great to know you're still supporting the community edition. Yes, we are, Chris.
And better. And it'll get better, Chris.
You'll see more over the summer. So currently, as Ravi just indicated, it's ArangoDB. So it's now, if you go to the download, it's at what we call 312. So the licensing changed a little bit. It's actually the full enterprise edition. So you can get the full. It's now, rather than capping on capabilities or features, it's capped on 100 gigs as far as data. So you can start to play with the full enterprise features. And as Ravi indicated,
without the limits as well. So Chris, you would not have limits on this. Only limit we are putting it is because we got burned is on the licensing part, where you can't use it for production or for commercial. But other than that, academic purposes, everything, have it.
Perfect. So with this, any comments, questions, concern, folks? If you don't have one-on-one, I'd like to, if you don't have any ideas now, follow up, but I'd love to hear what you like as future topics.
Okay, that is for RAG. They're saying we should use local LLM or not. Absolutely your call, Yvonne. So if you want to use local LLM, or if you want to open source LLM, you want to use Quen or any of those other DeepSeek, yes, of course, go for it. There's no limitation on our side. Yes, it does matter sometimes if you have a frontier model versus a local model. But our job as part of this context layer is to actually, and I think if, I don't know when you joined, but initial conversation is stuffing a context window. So having a million parameter or million token context window frontier model is not what we propose. We actually feel the context should be small and you should be very, very specific. And if you give the more specific and small context, you'll have a better shot at getting a good answer than not. So yes, for us, we don't require the largest or the biggest or the most advanced models. How do you evaluate? Okay, so there are questions.
So this,
Mark, you want to read it for everybody so that we can?
Yeah, how about that? So Sridhar has a question here. Are you folks continuing development of GraphDB specific features?
Yes, absolutely. So we introduced, for example, vector search in this thing. We actually have now better traversals. We are actually building out how can you scale up more elegantly with our contextual, now we call operational layer. How you can actually, what are some of the other features I'm trying to think about?
Well, I'll throw you a softball, Ravi. How about giving a pitch for autograph?
Yes. In fact, one of the challenge, thanks, Mark. So one of the things people struggle with is say, oh, we have your data structured or unstructured, but I don't know how to create the best graph and how to create. We actually now have autograph, which can actually help you do that. So absolutely, Sridhar, we are extending our capabilities, not only on the database side, but also adding an AI capabilities so that you can actually leverage not only our database in a better way, but also build AI and agents in a better way. Does that answer your question, Sridhar?
Yes, it does. Would you be explaining the autograph? That sounds interesting. Is there a link that you could post?
Yeah. And you will get to our website, but we can happy to. But in a nutshell, if you had, let's say you were building a RAG system and you wanted to see how the data, because if you're building a graph RAG, you want to take your documents. Right now, the challenge is how you build the pipelines, how do you create the knowledge graph, then how do you make sure that you can actually create a natural language interface to answer the question. Can you validate those answers? Can you see the graph? Can you interpret the graph? Can you actually customize the graph? All of that is now what we call autograph. So you can basically have that capability out of the box now, which we never had before. So Sridhar, if you're using our ArangoDB version now, you did not have that capability. This is brand new capability that we introduced.
Yeah, I just threw through a quick marketing at a glance in the docs, but I'll give you a pointer to our documentation here as well. And I'll give you some more details. But if you like to just go to the website, you can actually schedule a 30-minute demo as well, and we can give you a deep dive. But that'll give you a couple of resources just to become more familiar with it. It's pretty cool technology.
So if you're already on the hosted version of Enterprise Arango, is there a separate license to enable it, or can I just like
Yes.
upload my documents and just
I
run my
think
ML flow
so.
pipeline?
I think so first you will have to upgrade to so because you are on, I can check Sridhar, but I think you are on ArangoDB Enterprise Edition right now. But you will have to upgrade to the new version, which is the Contextual Data Foundation. So this is new offering, new product, because it has all these additional capabilities. And yes, there is a license implication, but Mark, we can follow up, Sridhar, if you want to play around and then decide. But yes, there are a lot of additional capabilities with all this, integration with LLMs, building this autograph, auto-rag, some agentic optimization layers, all of that stuff, which is additive.
Okay, thank you.
Gotcha. And then, so just going that we do have a couple questions here, Ravi. So Chris asked the
Sure.
next question, and Johnny, I'll get to your question in just a second, but Chris is asking, could you call on different LLMs for different
Yes.
contexts? Oh, but for different
Yes.
contexts. Okay.
Yes. If you decided, so one of the things we are kind of working on, so right now it's not pre-built, but one of the things we are thinking is, and it's not there, Chris, right now, but you can, if you do it manually, or if you defined it, one of the things we are trying to figure out, and we're trying to see whether we partner or whether we build it ourselves. Different LLMs are good at different things, right? So, and the idea is, if we have the evaluation of those LLMs also baked into our platform, and then the customer can just provide the API keys, and whether you give us the freedom to pick the best choice for you with the least amount of tokens and the least amount of cost, and if you trust the system or you have your own agent, or you have your own rules that you govern and your own prompts. Absolutely. I think that's definitely something that's on the horizon. Today you can do it, but you have to do some of that work yourself. We actually want to do it more like automated next time.
Gotcha. Thank you. And Johnny's got the next question.
Yes, Johnny.
How do you evaluate whether an AI agent used the correct context? That's a good question.
That's a great question. So, Johnny, there are a couple of things we have. So, if you're interested, maybe we can set up a demo and so on next time on the meetup. Maybe that's what we do, Mark. So, there are different ways we do it. First is we have few techniques. So, either the LLM as a judge, or you can have human as a judge, or you can ask the questions, or you can actually do the entity resolution, or you can look at the ontologies. So, there are various techniques that we have built in so that you can actually be assured that you did get the right context. And then, most importantly, it's not for us to know whether we use the right context. You want to make sure that you are able to tell it to the users. So the idea is, and what capabilities we have is, you can actually track saying, if this is the answer, what is behind this answer? What is the reasoning? What are the data elements that were used? What are the entities that were used? What are the chunks that were used? What are the embeddings that were used? What are the documents that were used? What are the parts of the document that were used to infer that answer? So you basically look at the answer, and then you can click on it, and basically you have an explainer giving you all of that context around the context itself. Does that answer your question, Johnny?
Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we have a next one from Mukta. So this is an interesting one. Do you have any recommendations for a good approach for mapping data from a variety of commercial off-the-shelf platforms like SAP, Salesforce, etc.?
Yeah, this is a good question, Mukta. I lived in that world, by the way. I was in business analytics. I was at SAP. I was at Informatica. So one of the things I would say, we are not saying we are specialized in it, because there are a lot of people, ETL companies, DBT, so on and so forth, who build these connectors and so on and so forth. What we can help you is, if you can connect to all those data sources and can give us the data, we will help you connect all of those different systems' data together. We can build this knowledge graph. We can build this autograph. We can actually make sense out of your data, which is coming from different systems. So you don't have to deal with the mess of saying, how do I now map SAP data to Salesforce data to Snowflake data, and how do I make sure they all relate to each other? Does that answer, Mukta? Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Good stuff. Did I miss any questions, folks? I kind of went through sequentially, but I'm just going to go through. I think that's. Having said that, your contextual way to know. I think that's it. Open it up for any last questions. If you guys can, I would, again, this is our first one in a while, so we're kicking this off. Please hit me up on LinkedIn or in the group. Just suggest topics you would like to have. And I'm just going to give you a blatant advertisement. So next week, on Wednesday, on May 27th, if you go to the arango.ai under the resource tabs, you'll see our events. We will be having a webinar with a senior director for AI ML with Zscaler, and we'll be diving down to their use case with Arango, where we help them support 40,000 cases a day, and we drop their mean time to resolution significantly. So that's a great one for folks that are interested in a service and support use case from that perspective. A couple other things that are happening for those folks that are in the Bay Area. We'll be at the Snowflake Summit, which is June 1st and 2nd. You'll see up on our website if anybody wants to meet with us or come by the booth. There'll be a great showing there. And we've recently joined Snowflake's partnership, so we'll be showing off a pretty unique solution. I'll keep that under wraps until we announce it, but we got some good stuff coming with Snowflake as well. And we look forward to growing this community. So please tell your friends, give us feedback how we did. We're always open for making things better. So really appreciate you guys joining. Have a wonderful day, everyone. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.